If he died suddenly and in office, that might well transform Donald Trump into a iconic historic figure.
Would Donald Trump prefer to die in office and be remembered as a president who died in office?
He is not thinking that that's the only options. He's thinking that the options are he's going to go on for indefinitely, and he is no doubt already plotting how from Mar-a-Lago he continues to be the dominant figure in American politics. It's like when you remove any dominant figure, dictators or I think people breathe a big sigh of relief. The quiet will be extraordinary. People will go, they'll breathe again. History starts over again.
Michael.
Joanna.
We are recording this in the middle of Lindsey Graham's ceremonial lying in state.
We are. I'm trying to think what that's called. It's not his funeral, but his coffin is being placed in the rotunda, I believe, of the Capitol. And this is a ceremony, a privilege accorded, I think, definitely. Well, actually, I don't know who it's accorded to, but
I think great men.
Great men.
I mean, is this? I mean, I would not have expected this for Lindsey Graham, frankly.
Well, death turns out to be a great PR coup.
Sudden death.
Sudden death. Yeah, lingering
death.
Mitch McConnell. Yeah, forget about it. But no, but literally 2 weeks ago. When did he die? 2 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, I think.
Well, whenever. Last time he was alive, Lindsey Graham was largely regarded as a as a hopeless sellout, suck up. I mean, an embarrassment. I mean, here was a person who, I mean, we know all of the things that he said about the genuine things he said about Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And then in order to maintain his own relevance, and also certainly quite a number of people in the Trump orbit have suggested to me, in order to avoid Trump's slurs against gay people, he sucked up to Donald Trump.
But Donald Trump does slur gay people.
But not Lindsey. Yeah, that's the point. So in order to avoid that, in order to avoid the getting on Trump's bad gay side.
Okay, so to avoid exposure, in fact, it's not even exposure. Trump.
It's not even exposure. Trump does this thing that suggesting, he calls people and he said, I hear there's a lot of funny stuff about Lindsey. A lot of stuff. You hearing that? And everybody. So that's
how he gets the information.
Yeah.
He goes, some people say.
That's how he spreads the slur.
Well, in death, Lindsey Graham is getting a lot of solemnity. We've got Presidents Netanyahu and Zelensky coming into town. They're both having meetings with Trump today. But are you actually saying that this is a PR coup for Lindsey Graham?
Yeah, no, of course it is. Literally. So he has gone from a person in embarrassment. And I think that he was widely seen as this. I mean, he was shameless in his suck-uppery.
Mm-hmm.
And now here he is, a statesman of our time.
A statesman of our time. And his sister, 11 years younger, whom he adopted after both her parents died, is sitting there ready to... I find this absolutely remarkable. This Nepo dynastic politics. I mean, she's going to inherit his Senate seat, it looks like.
It seems somewhat ironic that a Brit would find...
No, that's why I moved here. That's why I moved here. I mean, to get rid of that stuff. And then, of course, you have the Bushes, you have the Clintons, at least trying.
Politics always has been, always in this country, a strong dynastic theme.
Well, do you think Darlene Graham is going to win the seat, because now we've got Mark Sanford, the former governor of South Carolina, is coming out to run for Senate seat. I don't know what he's done since he stepped down as governor. I mean, he needs a job. Yeah. He needs a job. He wants to be back in power. He wants the fun of it all.
Yes, I think that she probably will. I think there are two steps here. You know, there's the first step of the primary, in which if she gets 50%, then she doesn't have to go to a runoff.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be the interesting thing. But the Trump endorsement is very powerful.
Why did Trump endorse her so early? Why didn't he see who the field was going to flush out?
I think he liked the story, actually. I think that there's, Trump is a movie of the week guy.
Right, you said that last week. Yeah, you said that on Saturday. So this is the hallmark movie of the week.
The sentimental aspect of this. I think it works for Trump. Now, remember, it works for Trump's now. Might he shift on this? If she is not obsequious in the way that her brother was.
Right.
Yeah, he could. I think it's yet unclear, because we hardly know this person, Darlene. She's just sort of she just entered the stage, a little shock on her face. And could she blow it? Yeah, easily.
America has always built its way forward through disruption, through reinvention, through people overcoming the challenges before them. Today, the ideas shaping America's future are being built collaboratively by communities, innovators, and entrepreneurs all looking in the same direction. In storefronts, community centers, and towns, most people drive through without stopping. People are using technology and creativity to solve real problems in practical ways, building opportunity, optimism, and momentum from the ground up. We're already writing America's next chapter. We're building what's next now.
So when we were watching, we had the prayer, and then a lady from South Carolina got up and you said, "I can't watch these people." And I said, "When you say these people, what do you mean?" And you said...
I said morons.
Please extrapolate.
I don't know who this woman was, but I was just signaled, by the way, that by our producer, that she's a congresswoman. But there are
congresswoman from South Carolina.
I'm sure, but it doesn't matter. I mean, she and she came up and she spoke with. Everything she said out of her mouth was valueless. And expected. Lindsey is not only a saint and has ascended to heaven, but he is the everyone in every one of our little cities was loved. Blah 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 blah.
He's gone up to that great golf course in the sky. I think he's probably playing 18 rounds, looking down on us and laughing in that fruity laugh that.
Yeah, I think most people, when they speak at funerals, default to a moron setting, but
I have not spoken at very many funerals, but
I've spoken at a lot of funerals.
Do you descend into that?
No, I'm fantastic. I get them laughing.
Oh, you do?
You that's what you have to do.
I spoke at Helen Gurley Brown's funeral because she died shortly after I became editor of Cosmopolitan, and it was an unbelievable lineup of speakers.
Now, just let me interrupt, because I actually believe Helen Gurley Brown, for a good part of my life, was probably one of the most famous women in America. She is now, I suspect, an utterly forgotten woman, but she was famous for writing a book in the early 1960s called Sex and the Single Girl, and then she went on to make Cosmopolitan magazine one of the most successful magazines in the country. But she was Are
you mansplaining Helen Gurley Brown to me? You are mansplaining HGB to me.
Well, you were not. You just were assuming that people knew who she was.
Oh, I was going to go on and explain who she was. I was
pointing out that she is entirely forgotten.
Well, she probably is entirely forgotten.
By me.
Except by you. And I haven't forgotten her, because she did an incredible job with Cosmo, and she took over. It was a small literary magazine, and when she took it over, it was the same year that The Pill was, sanctioned or whatever, and came onto the market, really. And so she rode that wave and created a phenomenal magazine. And I've always thought she didn't quite get the credit she should have done for creating the template for the modern magazine. But my point is,
she was a super sex person. That's what she was. She was a super sex person. Had a lot of sex of all kinds.
Did she have a lot? I often wonder if she actually had a lot of sex. She was married to David Brown,
yes, who himself was having a lot of sex. Yeah, it was a
sex positive time. I think the term now is sex positive, not super sex. But I remember Liz Smith, the then gossip columnist, spoke, and so did Barbara Walters. I had to follow Barbara Walters, and Barbara Walters was absolutely brilliant. And her last line was,
a lot of other people have had a lot of sex.
Well, right, good point.
Yes.
Very good point. Okay, well, and I got up there, and I had been given a letter. She used to write loads and loads of letters, and I'd been given one of her letters that she wrote home to her mum about how she had met Jacqueline Suzanne, the novelist, who at one point was very famous, and now everybody's forgotten.
Speaking of a lot of sex.
Also a lot of sex. And I got up and I read the letter, and as I got up there, I thought, there's no way in hell I am able to follow Barbara Walters, because she'd been hilarious. And so I had to completely change the tone. And so I read this little letter, and by the end of it, I almost choked up. And I never choke up. I haven't cried for years. I'm just not a weeper. And by the end of that, I had almost cried.
Well, that's what funerals are, as I say.
When I met her for lunch for the first time.
PR coup.
Yeah, a good PR coup. It was a very good. They
brings everybody to tears. So if
you die,
well, when not me, but more likely Donald Trump. That's interesting. If he died suddenly and in office, he would be that might well transform Donald Trump into a iconic historic figure.
So would he like that? Does Donald Trump just want to go on and on and on, or does he want a long, slow decline like Mitch McConnell? Mitch McConnell, by the way, released another photograph of himself this week, yesterday, and nobody believed it. Everybody was like, just put out a video, man. Just say 10-second video. Everybody's got an iPhone now, Mitch. These things, or an Android phone. Everybody has a phone. You can do a little video on it. All you have to do is say, thank you for your well wishes. I'm working hard at rehab. I'll be back soon. He can't do it.
He can't speak.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I think he's had a stroke, and the impairment is substantial.
Severe.
Yeah.
So why don't they just say that? Why are they pretending? Is it to get to the August the 3rd deadline, after which they don't have to put someone new in?
I don't know. It seems ridiculous to me, but it also seems like I don't know. I don't know the answer. Nobody knows the answer to that.
Okay, so let's go back to Donald Trump. Would Donald Trump prefer, given his druthers, as if we have any choice over this, to die in office and be remembered as a president who died in office? Because most of them don't.
He is not thinking that that's the only options. He's thinking that the options are he's going to go on for indefinitely. He's going to leave office. He's going back to Mar-a-Lago, and he is no doubt already plotting how from Mar-a-Lago he continues to be the dominant figure in American politics.
I just realized that we haven't told people what else we're planning to talk about. As usual, we just got straight into it. We forgot to tell them, please subscribe. We forgot to tell them who we are, because we have lots of new people who come to the podcast every week. You're Michael Wolff. You write books about Trump. I'm Joanna Coles. I am the Chief Content Officer at the Daily Beast, and we're going to discuss JD Vance's book. We're going to discuss Laura Loomer's bizarre 180 on Ukraine, and the discovery that she is, in fact, Ukrainian. Her roots are Ukrainian. Where should we start? Trump's death.
Well, let's finish off on Trump's death. Yeah.
We had Kurt Anderson on the show on Sunday, who's written a new novel. And in it, he imagines Trump's death, and he's coming down the escalator at Trump Tower. This takes place in 2035. So he's 90, and he has a massive stroke and just collapses. And all his MAGA fans think he's been assassinated and roar onto the street in Fifth Avenue and start smashing cars. And it's the beginning of the Civil War.
Well, that's interesting to think that Trump could go on for another 10 years or almost 10 years after he leaves office. I guess that would be 8 years after he leaves office. Yeah, and it's interesting that he might. I mean, that would certainly be the Trump plan. I'm going to leave office in 2028, 2029, and return to Mar-a-Lago, and I'm going to do from Mar-a-Lago what I did from the last time they sent me back to Mar-a-Lago, which is to continue to dominate the American political landscape. Is that possible? Well, I mean, the truth is, thank God for old age. It
creeps up on all of us.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, somebody, somewhat off topic here, I just was asked by a publication that will go nameless to write a piece, a short piece about something that I am optimistic about. And
good Lord, what could that possibly be?
And I said I'm optimistic about Donald Trump's death. And I actually disagree with Kurt. I think when that happens, that moment, and it's like when you remove any dominant figure, dictators or I think people breathe a big sigh of relief.
A big exhale.
Yeah, I think it's like the world clears. It's suddenly, and with Trump, all of this, the quiet will be extraordinary. People will go, they'll breathe again. They'll say, it's a kind of like, okay, yeah, let's history starts over again.
Well, we'll see, won't we? We'll see. You know who I think
There's a Saul Bellow line that says, death is good for some people.
That is a good line. I went to interview Saul Bellow once up in Vermont, and I asked him if he had any regrets, because he was in his 80s at this point, and he said his regrets were around women.
I was going to say, did he make a pass?
No, he didn't make a pass, actually. I think he was too old to make a pass.
Well, as a matter of fact, that makes sense. If you've ever read a Saul Bellow novel, which I have.
I've struggled
reread
through
them.
I find them very dense.
Oh, yes. No, I find them like it's just bliss.
I was wondering if I'd made a pass at him, actually. No, I'm joking. I didn't, but I enjoyed meeting him. We had a sort of 5-hour lunch, and his much younger wife was sort of hovering in the background. And I remember we ate blueberries from his garden. Anyway, I'm digressing.
Anyway, he's my favorite writer of all American, modern American writers.
And I would proffer a man who's completely gone out of fashion now, John Updike. I would have John Updike over Saul Bellow any day.
Completely out of fashion. Well, they're all out of fashion.
They're all out of fashion. All right, so let's come back to, who I think is thinking very hard about Donald Trump's death?
I don't.
JD Vance.
Oh.
JD Vance. We can now talk finally.
That's such an interesting thing about vice presidents, because they live for the death of the president, but they can't think about that. I mean, they certainly can't give any intimation that they are thinking about it.
Of course not.
And in their own minds, it must be a weird thing to be wishing for the death of someone. I mean, also.
Well, I've always thought that was the weirdest thing about King Charles, actually, that King Charles's entire life was wishing for the death of his mother, so he finally could get to be king and be the boss of everybody. And yet you're wishing for your mother to die at the same time. Very odd situation.
Right.
Long live the king.
With him, though, you could really see it. Let's go. Let's move. let's move it along.
I know, he was 74 by the time he took over, and then poor man 2 years later was diagnosed with cancer, and we don't know what kind of cancer. but we know he can live with it, even if it's not curable. Strange. Anyway, I think JD Vance is thinking a lot about Donald Trump's death. And what I found most extraordinary about his book, Communion, and I know you've read it now too, because we were texting about it, is how little there is about Donald Trump in this book. It's the most remarkable absence, as is his political life.
There's a whole range of things that are not in this book. There's very little about his meaning, a kind of curse skirting over his marriage, and absolutely not addressing the fact that his wife's family is an immigrant family, amidst his general sourness about all immigrants. I mean, which is also another point about his conversion to Catholicism, which in itself he kind of skirts over, although the book is actually about his search for God.
So what is the book about? Because I got to the end of it and I thought, what is this book about? I think you're completely right that everybody who's running for president has to write a book. I can't wait for Pete Hegseth's book.
It's
Come
interesting.
on, Pete. I want the full
two
story
things. I
of
mean,
your
it
marriages.
is just a straightforward campaign book, and every issue that you can think of, he ticks off a position on.
Right, economics,
screen
values.
time, elder care. You know,
Did you just say springtime?
Screen time.
Oh, screen time. I thought you said springtime.
Yeah. Well, I'm
and
sure
I was like, oh, he's
it's
going to
that.
change spring.
If that's yes. So all of those things, but the stated purpose of the book is as though he wants to do something more. I mean, let's remember, JD Vance is a, super look at me, best boy hot dog. Full of, I got to be the best. I got to be the top of the class. I got to be the president. And in this, so it's like, I gotta write a campaign book, but I gotta make it somehow more meaningful than a campaign book.
Well, than anybody else's campaign book.
So I will write a campaign book, but it will be under the rubric of my search for God.
Right.
Which also is a good campaign. That gives me a campaign advantage too, because I'm going to have to win over the God people. And I mean, I can't.
Well, you're going to talk to the base, the evangelicals, right?
Yes.
Slash people that believe in God.
So that's there, and it's. I mean, it's a weird thing because this is a real book. This is a kind of, at least one thread through this book is a searcher's book. I am looking. I'm not satisfied. I am not. I mean, this is essentially what he's saying. I'm not satisfied with what the meaning I have found in life. I am an unhappy person. And there's briefly talks about he could go to a therapist, but no, he doesn't want to do that.
Well, he goes to a therapist briefly, right? And then decides that the therapist isn't helpful enough and that it's whiny to talk about yourself, and that the therapist somehow lets him off and sort of is understanding, actually, of what his background has been, which has been up and down, family of addicts, living with his grandmother, etc. And what he wants is more responsibility for self in a way.
Well,
he writes a lot about that.
Yeah, I mean that's theory. He wants God, whatever God is, which then becomes germane to this book on what he thinks God is and how you, in his particular path to God along the way, as he's dealing with screen time and elder care and taxes and and so you have this the juxtaposition, and it's an awkward juxtaposition, is my search for spirituality at the same time and in the same context that I'm really climbing up the greasy pole of success. And that's what also he is opposed to. I mean, essentially the message, maybe the central message is I, JD Vance, the most ambitious person in America. I'm against ambition. And
yes, and ambition will make you miserable.
Ambition does not bring you happiness, and what brings you happiness is a good domestic, a nice domestic life, a nice church-going domestic life. Now, I don't have that. I don't have that, but JD Vance doesn't have that. As a matter of fact, I can't think of anything probably more at odds and remote from that than having a serious political career.
Right.
A serious political career means you do not have a domestic life. Your church-going life is a phony church-going life. So it's again this sense of a guy who is at odds with himself at every turn.
Well, and what I found most extraordinary about it, and you're right that this is a campaign book, is that what he's trying to do incredibly obviously is separate himself from Donald Trump. So I was going to read a couple of bits from it. So he picks up, there's a chapter called When in Rome. He's been at the Munich conference where he's, basically announced that he doesn't really believe in Europe as it is. And he goes, if Munich was a whirlwind, what came after I returned was a Category 5 hurricane. Though I had heard that President Trump might be interested in having me join his ticket in the national campaign now underway, I figured it was a long shot. I only had a year of political experience as a white man from Ohio. I added no diversity to the ticket and didn't deliver a swing state. Okay, cut to the most fascinating part of the process was also the most absurd. The in-person vetting with me, my wife, and a campaign attorney. You never cheated on your wife? He asked. I haven't, but I assume that people who have don't just admit it to a stranger. Sorry, I have to ask. Yeah, I know. Now, of course, this is for, to be the vice president to Donald Trump, who's cheated on everybody and everything, including his taxes. Anyway, the next paragraph. On the morning of the 2024 Republican National Convention, President Trump called me and asked me to join him on the ticket. My family's lives changed instantly from the media spotlight to the ever-present Secret Service detail. The weekend after I was nominated, I tried to go to the grocery store, but if anyone there didn't already know who I was, they surely noticed the 40-armed guards surrounding me. That's about as much as you get. Most people would go into this in real detail.
Yeah, and actually,
but hold on, let me just finish. It's almost as if it's not really that big a deal that Donald Trump selected him to be his vice president. We know this was to date the crowning glory of this unbelievably ambitious man's life. And what he realizes now, it is a millstone around his neck if he is going to run in 2028. And he is trying to do what Kamala Harris failed to do with Joe Biden, which is put a wedge between them.
Absolutely. But let me just fill in. This isn't what happened.
Okay, go on.
So the Munich conference is in February.
Right.
He's not selected to be the vice president until July. So actually what is happening, it's not whatever word he,
What's happened to you? You're making Mitch McConnell noises.
Yes. I just forgot the word. Well,
he says, I heard that President Trump might be interested in having me join his
just
ticket.
After he gets back. In this, as he tells the story, after I got back
him
from
to join him. Asked me to join him on the ticket.
Well, no, after I got back from the security conference in Munich, it's a maelstrom, or as though everything is starting to happen.
Category 5 hurricane.
Yes, okay, there. That's not true. Actually, what happens is he gets back and then begins the serious campaigning to get this job.
Okay.
It's not things that happen to him. He's trying to make this happen. And his people, Peter Thiel, foremost among them, are beginning to lobby the set of people around Donald Trump. So
this is all completely disingenuous.
Completely.
It literally
and it
is
doesn't happen until, as I say, until July, and it's unclear that this is going to happen to him at this point. Trump is not particularly convinced. Trump doesn't, he would not be, I would say, among the top among the top 3 people yet. And then by a process of elimination and by the process of who wants it and who doesn't, I mean, he does get it. I mean, he's always sort of been a contender. He's the candidate of, well, Peter Thiel and the technology people, but also of Trump's son.
Don Jr.
Yes. So he is certainly in the mix, but that doesn't happen. So his life does not transform. The category, the hurricane doesn't start until that happens in July.
Well, and also that he's part of trying to make the hurricane happen. That he's behaving as if it's all done to him, as if he has no agency.
Actually, yes.
But in fact, he's hustling as hard as he possibly can. Because the other thing you learn from this book is he is a hustler. Yeah. He's always hustling to get the best priests available. I mean, he wants to go to the fancy church.
Totally. Completely.
I mean, he's using the Catholic Church in this case to elevate himself.
And this is something else. Is this from the point of view of the theology in this book?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so JD Vance grows up in an evangelical household and is a devoted evangelical himself, and then becomes disillusioned and then becomes an atheist. I mean, kind of a militant atheist, and then that doesn't work for him, and he goes to law school. He goes to Yale, and I think he thinks that the Ivy League might save him, and that doesn't quite work. He's still not satisfied, not happy, not requited in his soul, and he becomes a venture capitalist. And I guess it's then I'll get rich.
Money will give me salve and solve my issues.
Right, and then he goes back to religion, but he doesn't go back to evangelical religion or to being a Protestant. He becomes a Roman Catholic. Now, and there's no real explanation. You're looking for God. Why would you, an evangelical, someone who is wholly, I mean, whose political career is about to be invested in evangelicalism and essentially the white South, why would you pick a Roman Catholic God to be yours? And it's not clear. He doesn't really explain this. And it's one of those other contradictions. I mean, the Roman Catholic Church, again, amid all of his sourness about immigrants, the Roman Catholic Church is an immigrant church. He doesn't deal with this. The Roman Catholic Church, actually then curiously, his religious model, chief religious model, remains Charlie Kirk.
Right. I was just going to say that. Yeah.
And I can't think of anyone more at odds with Catholicism than Charlie Kirk. I mean, Charlie Kirk is an evangelical, charismatic, I speak to God, I speak on behalf of God, exactly what the Roman Catholic Church is. I mean, the formal hierarchical Roman Catholic Church could not be more at odds with that charismatic evangelical.
Well, think of the odds of it too. I mean, the confession booth, the sort of darkness, the formality of the Catholic service against the fireworks that they had for the memorial for Charlie Kirk in the Arizona Stadium. I mean, it's a show, it's performative.
I mean, let's assume that maybe at some point there is something in the Roman Catholic Church, and certainly JD Vance would not be the first person to find something there, something unique, something that speaks to him, something that worthy of this conversion in his life. But he can't say that because he doesn't want to antagonize the evangelicals who he will need. I mean, the Catholics are much more unreliable in terms of a coalition. He needs the evangelicals.
Well, and
so therefore, it's really, yes, I converted to the Roman Catholic Church, but I'm really a Christian. Which is a complete misunderstanding. I mean, the history of of Western history is a battle between Protestants and Catholics.
Right.
I mean, you can't just smooth this over.
Well, it's also, as you were pointing out before we sat down to discuss this, it's the church of the Hispanic community, the Latin community, who he is literally rounding up with masked ICE agents and throwing in the back of vans. And how he tries to square that is completely unsatisfactory in the book. And the whole thing is like, he's got one side of his life compartmentalized over here, which is I'm wrestling with why are we here? What are we doing? And all these priests who appear to be sort of father figures to him giving all this advice. And then on the flip side, he is the vice president to Donald Trump, who is the cruelest, most unpleasant man you can imagine.
I think you could call Donald Trump a heathen.
Well, you could definitely call him a heathen, right?
Yes.
The way he holds the Bible upside down. I mean, it's laughable how he's trying to square the circle.
No, and then there's, within this book, here is a man I'm questioning. I have tons of questions. I'm a questing. I'm a searcher for this. But in real life, JD Vance, I mean, what we've seen of him, he's a complete dickhead, full of certainties, and
Right.
and anybody who deviates from MAGA or Trump doctrine is, he insults and dismisses.
Well, and he cozies up to Stephen Miller, who's the architect of what's going on with immigration right now. And then he basically attacks the Catholic Church, too, for not having a realistic view of what immigration is. Then he attacks modern economists, saying that they don't understand what immigration is. I mean, the whole, he has his Ayn Rand moment as well. Let's not forget that. Yeah. Where he talks about the fountainhead, and that's his brief kind of venture capital moment, and it's all about the markets. The markets will save us. And then he decides that's not true. But I just wanted to read this bit here because it says, so this is how he describes the campaign. We traveled around the country. I gave speeches and interviews to the media. Usha found outings in new cities with the kids. The president and I won the election, and I became the vice president of the United States. We moved into a giant house at the Naval Observatory in Northwest Washington. We arrived around noon on January the 21st to a delicious meal cooked by our new team of chefs. Father Henry came to offer a blessing for the new house, and the kids explored their new rooms and playrooms. I mean, this is the man that wrote Hillbilly Elegy. I mean, how could he possibly have written that? There's no detail in it. What did they have for lunch?
Well,
I mean, it makes no sense as a book. We rode around the country. We won the election. That's all it gets.
Okay, just to understand, I mean, Hillbilly Elegy, which is a pretty good book.
Oh, it's well written.
And he wrote it. I mean, he didn't have anyone else to write it.
Right.
When you're a political figure, when you're at that level, I mean, you have a huge staff. You don't have the time. You don't have the mental calm to write a book. So what do? You get other people to write.
Right.
And that's partly what this book feels like. So there is the part of the book which is JD Vance. I am searching for something. I'm an unhappy person.
Mm-hmm.
I would expect. He's a kind of a depressed person, and
and he grew up with no structure.
Yeah, and he's
looking for structure.
He is looking, and that is there. And I think that he said to aides, "Okay, this is a book about my search for meaning. I want that, but it's also the other things." So, and you're farming this out to aides. You're giving a kind of top line. This is what I want, but you do the research on this topic, and you do the research on that topic, and then I need an outline, and then I'll fill in some of it.
Right, because it doesn't flow as a book. There's no flow to it. I mean, there's a chronology to it, but there's really no flow.
But what is interesting is everybody who's running for president writes a completely bullshit book, which no one reads and no one is expected to read,
except Obama's books. Book, The Audacity of Hope.
But that was before he was a
right. But I think he was always thinking of running for president, right? Wasn't he? Was just looking for his time.
Yeah, but again, that's a book that he wrote at a given point in time, and the books that came after that is
Dreams of My Father
is not particularly readable. But I was just going to say nobody reads these books and nobody really buys these books. But so I go into the bookstore to get JD Vance's book, and JD Vance's book in the bookstore that I went to.
Did you go to Bookhampton?
Yes, is right next JD Vance, and then Mike Pence's book.
Oh, how funny! Really, nobody's going to read Mike Pence's book,
so
right?
I see. So I'm looking at this and thinking, do I have to buy this book? And then a guy comes along in East Hampton and picks up Mike Pence's book and takes it to the cash register and literally buys it. I'm like, oh my God! And it took everything within me not to say, can you explain yourself? Are you really going to read this?
Maybe he's buying it as a joke for a friend.
Maybe.
Well, I told you my difficulty of finding JD Vance's book. They didn't have it in McNally Jackson. They definitely didn't have it in the Strand. And they made a point of telling me that they hadn't ordered it. And then I got it at Barnes & Noble with this $5 off sticker, so at least my walk saved me $5.
So I have a passage that I want to read.
Okay.
All
right.
And he's writing about about Usha, and he says, one night she told me about a book she'd read by Joan Didion called The Year of Magical Thinking. I'm really freaked out by death, she told me, and I found it to be cathartic. This is the book, to be cathartic.
She's saying that.
Yes. Wow, I replied. I'll pick it up from the library tomorrow. Notice the library.
Yeah, of course. The libraries that, with all their cuts
yes,
are being closed all over the country.
Yeah. And you don't think JD Vance is just going, if he wants to read a book, to Amazon like the rest of us?
Right.
I told her good night and that I loved her. And I guess he's not getting into bed.
Well, I think she may be working in Washington at this point.
I told her good night and that I loved her. And then I went to the online Oxford English Dictionary to look up cathartic. And then in the text, he actually reproduces the dictionary definition of cathartic. Now, cathartic is a nice word. I mean, he knows what cathartic means. I mean, he went to college. Everybody, if you went to college and you don't know what cathartic means, you have failed college, or college has failed you.
He was writing press releases for the Marines. That's what he did. He was in communications. Of course, he knows. Well,
he's already written Hillbilly Elegy by this point.
Well, that's absurd.
I mean,
right.
this is
timeline, right?
So he is doing this thing. And it's also a kind of.
It's not that complicated a word, cathartic.
No, and it's also a kind of a weird.
Also, frankly, if you're
condescending way to stroke his wife.
Well, I think it might be more. He's obviously trying to reach down to people who are struggling to read his book, but it's bizarre he wouldn't know the word. First of all, he worked in communications, but secondly, church is full of catharsis. They talk all the time, if you go to a church service, about how cathartic it is to confess your sins or to listen to or to pray. The whole point of prayer is catharsis. So this makes no sense. And why did nobody pick it up? Why is nobody editing this book? And can I just add, this cover is dreadful. And when I look to see what the church is, this little sort of church, maybe it's in Ohio. No, it's Adobe stock photo. They couldn't even come up with a personal church to him.
Well, they never take a photo I've written a lot of books, and one of the things that distinguishes all of the books I've written is terrible covers. Because at some point in
I don't think that's true.
Generation
I remember the
ago,
cover of Fire and Fury. It's got
terrible.
One of the terrible.
Not only is it one of the terrible covers of all time, it became actually an online meme. Can you make a better cover for this book? It's just a generic cover. It's like here's a Macintosh. They say to some kid in the office, you can work the Macintosh, right?
Okay, that dates you. I don't think anybody's saying you can do the Macintosh. That is very 1990s.
No, but that is literally where the book business is.
Well, nowadays you could come up with a better one on AI. In fact, this should be a challenge to anybody watching. Could you come up with a better cover for JD Vance, this book, than this? If you can, we have so many creative people who listen to us. Please send it to us, because this is literally stock photo. It's Adobe stock.
Okay, all folks. Nobody ever gets a picture. They don't even take. When I first started to write books, they sent a photographer to take your picture. No.
Right.
Now, can you send us a picture now?
Right, you have to take a picture of
Yes.
yourself. All right. Well, is there a picture of JD Vance in here? Yes, there is. I think it's his official portrait.
Yeah, it is. So they just. I mean, it's the book business. And I actually wonder how much he got for this book.
I don't know how much he got for it. We should find out, because we should remember Andrew Cuomo got $5 million for his, and he made some of his staff write his book, right? That was very opportunistic of him. American leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, the thing, though, that I want to emphasize here is that this isn't just a phony baloney campaign book, even though catharsis. This is a book of a guy who really feels like, it really feels like there is meaning out there which he is searching for and he hasn't found. And his life is full of so many contradictory parts that it feels like he could come apart at
any moment. I thought that too, that this is a man on the edge of either jumping into the abyss or about to fragment in so many pieces.
And I'd go for another point, and maybe the most important one, is that it's really unclear were he to become the president of the United States, what kind of president he would be, or what he would stand for, or I couldn't even tell you, actually, projecting, would he be a good president, or good and bad in the sense of what a liberal person would think of him. You can't tell where he will go.
Right. And also, can I just point out that this is a man who said he doesn't understand what the word cathartic meant. And then one of his chapters is called Semper Why. N'importe. But I did want to read one of the priests that he has analyzes his relationship with Usha and says that, I can't find the actual quote now because I was underlining everything going through. That's right. There was a great line where he goes, I had unconsciously absorbed the biases of America's educated class. What is he talking about? But one of the priests says to him that he's putting far too much pressure on Usha and that he's taken his essential desire for security and structure from his grandmother Memoir and put it onto Usha. And then there's a whole debate about how does the priest know, because the priest is essentially without relationship experience. Anyway, it was just an interesting point.
I found the Usha thing interesting too, because it's the suggestion is that Usha is without religion and without belief, which is but we don't know this because this is really quite a blank there.
Right, I was going to say Usha is a blank in the book.
Yes, and then but then the children are being raised. We are sort of prompted to assume as Roman Catholics. So was there a discussion with there must have been a discussion with the wife. I mean, this is it's not an insubstantial thing in a marriage and in decisions you make about your children, but we don't get any of that.
No, we don't. And then here's the bit I wanted to talk about in terms of therapy. And for those of you who are in therapy or have therapy or have ever had therapy, this is his thing. There was a deeper problem with therapy as I encountered it. The first thing is the framing turned me into a victim rather than an actor. I'm sure that therapy helps many people, but the thought of being a victim made me want to puke. No matter how bad the things that happened to me, I didn't want to see myself as a helpless bit character in my own life. A person to whom things happened, I wanted to be the author of my own destiny. Our trauma did not write us a moral blank check. And I thought that he misunderstood what therapy was, actually. And then he goes, I was searching for a more satisfying accounting of wrongdoing and responsibility, of temptation and willpower, of virtue and guilt. It was equally wrong to wallow in trauma and pretend it controlled us, or worse, deprived of us of our agency. There had to be a third world. But most of all, I wanted to be a better person. I wanted to be worthy of the woman I was madly in love with.
There's a kind of thing in which the premise of the book is meant to be bold. I'm going to get out there. This is about God, about my search for God, to decide this is what is most important to me. Bold, and I'm out there. I'm going to say this. I'm going to admit to this. I'm going to reveal myself. But at the same time, everything about the book goes out of its way to be non-controversial.
Right. And the Charlie Kirk thing is also interesting because Charlie, who of course isn't here to contradict any of this, becomes his sort of bro in a way that he talks to about the whole thing. And you just feel like that's totally unconvincing to me. I just don't believe that he had that much in common to talk to Charlie about.
Well, I think that's true, and also, as I say, the Catholicism of it all, the Catholic Church of it all. I find it impossible to imagine Charlie Kirk having any kind of sympathy with the Roman Catholic Church.
Well, let's hope that JD Vance does go to confession every Sunday, because I think JD, you would find it helpful.
Yeah, no, and actually he might again. And I don't want to entirely make this about making fun of this guy
because you don't want to belittle someone's spiritual search.
Yes, I do. Usually,
okay.
I
all right. Well, I don't want to.
But I do find that there is a genuinely divided personality here. I mean. And that's what I usually find interesting in a character. Donald Trump doesn't have a divided personality. Most politicians don't. And JD Vance does. And that could be, in so many ways, that can be interesting. In so many ways, it's an actually even more interesting than just a searcher. It's a searcher who at the same time is desperate for worldly success. So these
and recognition.
Yeah, these two contradictory things exist within this guy. And what happens? I don't know. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah, well, it's definitely his campaign book, and I cannot wait. How is Pete Hegseth going to best this? How is Marco Rubio going to best this? Because what he's doing here is setting himself up as a serious man.
Well, they don't have to. They'll just do a campaign book that they won't even read.
Right. But how does Pete Hegseth explain his previous marriages and his intoxication?
You don't have to do this in a campaign book. First thing, you don't have to do it because you have a staff to do it. And that's it. So it'll be Pete Hegseth, and Pete Hegseth will be on the cover of the book.
Yes, he will, because that's part of his.
Yeah, so it's interesting here that JD is not on the cover of this book. But anyway, Pete Hegseth will be on the cover of the book, and it will just be a book that no one, least of all Pete Hegseth, reads.
So this is turning into a sort of cultural, it's almost like a review episode. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, which again, someone I really don't understand, is Laura Loomer. So Laura Loomer has had a 180 on Ukraine. She's been out there saying forever that the Ukraine war should be brought to an end, that Trump should, finish it, and that essentially she now says that she swallowed Russian propaganda, that she's been talking nonsense. She went to Ukraine. She met Volodymyr Zelensky, and she's made a strange little documentary about it.
This is a Ukraine moment, which is suddenly catching everybody, including Donald Trump, in the headlights.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it catches JD Vance in the headlights too. I mean, remember, all of these people were Russian, if not sympathizers, they were Russian leaners, and they were Russian leaners because Russia was going to win.
Right. So they were really
they were
just
all on the side of the winner here, and Putin was this and it was opportunistic for all of them, including Donald Trump, to be a Russian
supporter.
Yeah. And clearly that was a bad call. I mean, JD in the book is kind of like a little sheepish about this. I mean, we have Ukraine at this historic moment in time is the pivot. I mean, it has thrown everything into. I mean, I don't think anybody knows how to quite deal with this.
Well, and of course, Lindsey Graham, just coming back where we began with his lying in state in the rotunda, died after coming back from his 10th visit to Ukraine, and despite his sort of suck-uppery, the one thing he was consistent on was we should be supporting Ukraine. We should push Russia back. Russia cannot be allowed to walk into Europe.
So Lindsey Graham, is kind of continues that neocon thread. That as much as he was sucking up to Trump, he was in the background, and now that becomes a justification. By the way, and perhaps it was he sucked up to Trump because he was preserving his neocon beliefs. Against
Cold War beliefs.
Against the MAGA people who were, Tucker was going to Russia. Tucker is, we shouldn't spend a dime on Ukraine. All of that kind of thing, in which everybody is. How do you now reconcile this with the fact that Ukraine has changed the nature of war. It's changed our understanding of who can of the power equation in war, in which Donald Trump is experiencing firsthand in Iran, and it certainly looks like at this point that Ukraine is going to. The result is going to be an historic reversal, really. Russia is fucked.
So how important is Laura Loomer in Trump's circle? Because she's an influencer, but what does that mean? We know that she's spent a lot of time going back in social media feeds of people that Trump has hired and pointing out things they've said that were disloyal to him.
This is an easy answer. Laura Loomer is not important in the circle, but she can be important to Trump himself. She has Trump's phone number. She can get Trump on the phone. Trump likes to talk to her.
She was traveling with him a lot at one point. Yeah. That seems to have calmed down.
Yeah, and she is actually. This is the important hinge here is she's a Natalie Harp person. So.
Did Natalie Harp bring her in?
Yes, and certainly during the campaign, Natalie Harp was the person who approved her getting on the plane. So she is she has contacts within the Trump circle, and then Trump likes her. So she gets Trump on the phone, and she goes does her thing, and he's. The last person he talked to. So fine, she wants so and so fired because so and so is not loyal to him. He might well do that.
So is her 180 on Ukraine going to be significant to him, or is it already going on anyway?
It's already obviously. I mean, Zelensky is now in town for Lindsey Graham's funeral, but he will get time with Trump, and Trump is how could you miss the fact that that Ukraine is the advantage at this point is profoundly with Ukraine.
And Trump himself is now, as we've said, in an Iranian standoff, which it's unclear that how it's going to resolve, and the Iranians are now in control of the Strait of Hormuz.
Also, yes, in a broader sense, the foreign policy aspect of this administration, of the second Trump administration, has been a complete disaster.
Apart from Venezuela.
Apart from yes, but even now, and by the way, even Cuba is not going well. The Cubans are hanging on, and he can't make that happen. The Iranian thing is a complete disaster. The alignment with Russia, obviously, a bad call. Remember, he kicked Zelensky out of the Oval Office.
Well, and another thing that's very hard to square with JD Vance's apparent piety, the way they humiliated Zelensky when he was in the Oval Office.
Well, he was a loser then. Now he's a winner. They're, Netanyahu now in, trying to get time with Donald Trump, and some question about whether he's going to get that time, whether Trump is going to really diss him,
right? Really humiliate him,
because that's a bad call. Coddling up to Netanyahu and then getting stuck in Iran. Everything is a bad call here. A terrible call. So Greenland, let's not forget Greenland,
right?
So within this context, he really needs a success. So, and Ukraine is beginning to look like it could be his. He
could piggyback off Lindsey Graham's funeral to a more successful strategy with Ukraine.
Bingo. Yes.
Okay, Michael, such fun to sit in the studio with you. We'll be back on Thursday.
We will.
We will be back on Thursday.
And the Thursday after that, and the Tuesday and the Saturday.
God willing. God willing. We don't want to die in podcast. We don't want to die mid-podcast. If you have been, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to the Daily Beast. I think 4,000 subscribers. We've got 4,000 new subscribers since last week. Thank you very much. We appreciate your support. We're independent media, which is why we can talk like we do. And why don't you thank our crew?
Ryan, who I'm looking at. John, who I'm looking at. Neil, who I'm not looking at. Heather. Rachel.
So the good news is we have so many B-Beast tier members now. There are too many names to read out, and we really appreciate your support.